Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Good morning, everyone. We are truly delighted to welcome you all today for this exceptional event. Daron, let me talk some words in French because I know you understand. Merci d'être venus si nombreux aujourd'hui pour cet événement exceptionnel, organisé par le département des sciences économiques et la faculté de l'école des sciences de la gestion à l'UQAM, en collaboration avec nos chaires et groupes de recherche, la chaire de recherche sur les enjeux économiques internationaux, la chaire de macroéconomie et prévision, les groupes de capital humain, les groupes de développement économique et inégalité des territoires, ainsi que Mila, Quebec Artificial Intelligence Institute. It is a great pleasure to welcome Daron Acemoglu and Yoshua Bengio, two leading researchers whose work has deeply influenced how we understand institutions, technology, and their impact on society. Et maintenant, j'ai le grand plaisir d'inviter les doyens de notre faculté, les professeurs comme Cette, à prendre la parole pour quelques mots d'ouverture. Merci beaucoup.
Je suis immensément honoré de vous voir si nombreux aujourd'hui. En fait, c'est un grand honneur que je vous souhaite la bienvenue à cet événement tout à fait exceptionnel. Aujourd'hui, nous accueillons deux figures tutélaires de la pensée mondiale. Deux esprits dont le travail ne se contente pas d'analyser le monde, il le redéfinit. We have the honor of welcoming Professor Daron Acemoglu, a world-renowned economist whose work serves as a guiding light regarding institutions, inequalities, and the dynamics of progress. And also Professor Yoshua Bengio, a pioneer and undisputed leading authority in the field of artificial intelligence, whose impact extends beyond technology to ethics and social responsibility. Their presence among us is both an honor and a rare opportunity to enrich our reflection on major societal issues. À l'UQAM, nous avons une conviction inébranlable. Le progrès naît du dialogue interdisciplinaire. L'intelligence artificielle, la transformation des économies et l'avenir du travail ne sont pas des sujets confinés au laboratoire ou au manuel. Ce sont les forces qui remodèlent déjà notre quotidien et notre avenir collectif. Nous avons la chance unique d'entendre deux des voix les plus visionnaires sur ces questions fondamentales. Ce n'est pas tous les jours que nous accueillons le co-récipiendaire d'un prix Nobel. Maintenant que je sais que vous comprenez le français, je peux... Ce n'est pas non plus tous les jours que nous remettons un doctorat honoris causa. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a tremendous honor for our university, through its business school, UQAM, and its Department of Economics, to award an honorary doctorate to Professor Daron Acemoglu. This is one of the highest distinctions an institution can grant. It crowns not only extraordinary scientific excellence, but also an exceptional commitment to making our world more understandable and more just. Professor Acemoglu, your groundbreaking work on institutions, inequality, and technological progress has defined the thinking of leaders and academics globally. By recognizing your contributions, we reaffirm our commitment to fostering a more just and informed society. It's a true privilege to welcome you as an honorary doctor of our institution. Thank you for accepting our... Je salue également le professeur Yoshua Bengio pour sa présence, sa générosité et son leadership éthique. Vos travaux ne sont pas seulement de la rigueur scientifique, ils sont un modèle de responsabilité sociale au service de l'humanité. Les échanges que vous partagerez aujourd'hui nourriront des réflexions essentielles et durables au sein de la communauté académique. Permettez-moi, en conclusion, de rappeler la mission de l'UQAM. Former des leaders visionnaires qui conjuguent l'excellence académique avec le sens critique et l'impératif de responsabilité sociale pour une société plus innovante, plus inclusive et plus durable. Merci à la professeure Fonseca et à son équipe du Centre de recherche sur les enjeux économiques et intergénérationnels pour avoir organisé cet espace d'excellence. Et surtout, merci à nos invités d'honneur, dont mon très cher Pierre Fortin, dont la richesse intellectuelle qui nous offre aujourd'hui. Je vous souhaite à toutes et à tous une rencontre inspirante, audacieuse et résolument tournée vers l'avenir. Thank you. Merci à tous.
Okay. Préciser que c'est un travail d'équipe avec tous les partenaires qu'il y a à gauche. Today, I start the dialogue that Daron and Joshua, Daron from the University, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Professor Yoshua Bengio from University of Montreal, and founder and scientific director of Mila. To guide today's conversation, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Philippe Goulet-Coulombe from our own Department of Economics at UQAM. Let's begin.
All right, well, hello everybody, good morning. So I guess let's dive right into it. I think we're all eager to discuss many things here today. So the first segment will be about the size and speed of the AI revolution, and I'm sure both of you have much to say about that. And past technological revolution, right, when you think about electricity, the automobile, modern engineering, I mean, it took many years to happen and fundamentally transform our societies. But for many of us, I mean, AI actually appeared on the radar maybe 3 years ago when ChatGPT was launched, and we're fully aware, I mean, this has been ongoing for years, but it appeared on most people's radar only 3 years ago, and it started by finding non-existent coffee shops in Sherbrooke, and people found that quite funny, but nowadays it always finds the right coffee shops and many more useful things. So I guess first question to you is, how should we think about the sheer size of this AI revolution compared to earlier transformations, right? There's been many of them in history. How should we think about the size of this one?
I don't think the size is necessarily easy to think through, but what I have no doubt is that this is a very promising technology, and it is going to define our lives in many different ways in the next several decades. I think the most useful technologies are the ones that enable humans to do new things, companies to provide new goods and services, bring needs and supplies together, create new understandings. And I think AI has that capability, but it's not clear how quickly or whether at all those capabilities will develop. So I think that's one place where the uncertainties are. The second is exactly about the speed, as you were hinting at, which is, this is a very rapidly evolving technology, and that's discombobulating in some ways because it creates fewer opportunities for responding and reacting to it. So it makes it even more important that we are proactive in the way that we think about the technology, about its direction, what it means for the technology to be socially useful, perhaps even for regulation in a more proactive way. But I also think that, we have to be deliberative, like thinking everything's going to change in 1 or 2 years is also too excessive. In some sense, it might impose on us a sense of helplessness if we think things are moving faster than they really are. I think there are some aspects in which AI is advancing very, very rapidly, but the way in which it's going to transform our lives is probably something that's going to play out not over months or years, but a decade or two. So we have some time to be deliberative as well.
Thanks. And I guess, picking up from that, right, the next question is if we have to think, because oftentimes we think about what's going on right now, but at the speed things have been going in terms of the technology, I mean, what seemed to be actual 3 years ago is not actual today, and what's actual today likely won't be in 3 years from now. I guess my question to you, Yoshua, more generally about the technology, if natural language interfaces is kind of the current revolution, what is next?
What we, do you hear me? Yeah, is it working? Yes, okay. Well, before I answer your question, je veux souhaiter la bienvenue à tous ceux qui viennent nous écouter. C'est une question vraiment importante qu'on essaie d'élucider, donc j'apprécie votre présence. And I want to congratulate you, not just for the Nobel Prize, but for coming here and for the honoris causa doctorate. And I agree with everything you've said up to now.
Up to now.
I'm a cautious guy. So, regarding the speed of progress, I think it's really important to be empirical about it. And the good news is there's a lot of different studies measuring different kind of cognitive abilities of AIs. So we can get a pretty good portrait of not just where we are, but in order to predict the future, looking at the past. And in the last 5 years, it's been quite amazing, as you can imagine. One of the things I've been talking about for almost a decade now is that neural nets, which is at the heart of the current success of AI, are good at making predictions that are like intuitions of a system, similar to our own intuitions, but not very good at being coherent and reason in the way that also humans can do. So people sometimes use the system 1, system 2 division of cognitive abilities. So the systems we've had were really good at system 1, but not very good at system 2. And the ones we have now are still much worse than humans, and so you can get those systems to be incoherent. You gave some examples, but this has been well documented. But what is also well documented is the progress that has happened on this ability to be coherent and to reason. I think there's still a large gap. And a good way to see this is there's a recent study from Mila from last spring that they updated last summer, where we see exponential progress in planning abilities that actually are related to the question of tasks that humans solve. So looking at how much time it takes for an engineer to solve a particular task, and then, are the AI systems able to do those tasks? And so the duration of the systems, of the tasks that the systems are able to solve is growing exponentially fast. Now, we don't know what the future is. It could be that we hit a wall, scientifically speaking, and then things flatten, or it could be that this exponential progress continues. There are also arguments that it could accelerate, and the reason for this potential acceleration is that people think about is the use of AI to do research in AI, and in particular the fact that we're making recently a lot of progress in the ability of AI system to program and to understand machine learning concepts, to do machine learning experiments and so on, suggests that we could get to a point where they still can't replace humans in most tasks because they're missing various cognitive abilities and interpersonal abilities, but they could be really, really good at AI research. And if you're really, really good at AI research, then you can accelerate research in AI. So all these scenarios are possible, and I think we should be fairly agnostic, just looking at the trends. But so what I expect in terms of what's next is significant progress on these reasoning abilities. And the reason why I expect this is because, well, I've been working on that question for a while, and I can see that the current systems are still not exploiting a lot of the things we know from human cognition and all the work that has been done over the last 75 years in computer science, on reasoning, search and mathematics. So there's, I think, a lot of low-hanging fruits for the next couple of years to improve in that direction.
And I'm curious, so we've talked about all those possibilities, but you mentioned there's always this remote possibility that we could hit a wall and that speed, the speed could decrease.
Yeah.
What kind of roadblocks do you have in mind more concretely?
Well, it's hard to predict those things, but we've seen in other technological domains that you could have fast progress and then somehow we hit a wall and maybe it's going to be another decade before somebody finds a solution. It's really hard to predict that.
And it's something that happened in AI, right? There were AI winters, I think.
That's right.
One
That's
in the
right.
80s or 90s, and then
Several, yes.
Yeah.
Now we're back.
If I can jump in on that one, I think Yoshua's knowledge on this is a million times mine, but I guess...
You compensate for the economics.
Yeah, exactly. I guess there are two things that make me think that possible bottlenecks could arise. One is that, at least the only example of cognitive intelligence of general nature that we have, human brain, is highly multimodal. So the intuitions are then evaluated through lots of different senses, different ways of reasoning. Now, it's not clear whether the current architecture can replicate that multimodality or bypass it. So that's one bottleneck. The other one is that I think the metrics that we use for quantifying progress are also somewhat arbitrary. So it's not like we have a mapping.
Engineers figure it out, and they could be wrong.
It's not like general intelligence has a clear metric.
No.
That we can say, if on this metric we are exponential, that means general intelligence improvements are exponential. So I think both of those could act as potential sources of bottlenecks down the line in the near future or far future.
Yeah, it could be that there is some aspect of cognition where currently systems are weak and turns out we don't have engineering or scientific solutions. So we shouldn't assume that it's going to be one way or the other. But from a policy perspective, I think the wise thing to do is to prepare against all of the scenarios. So slowing down or accelerating or anything in between. And the kinds of policies that are needed are very different. For example, we'll talk later about concentration of power. If we are in a scenario where the scientific advance is flat and then AI becomes a commodity, every country can do it, every company can do it, the knowledge of how to do it becomes common. And the other extreme, where you have fast acceleration, is likely that we're going to get much more concentration of economic power in the hands of whatever company or a few companies that have a major lead. And at a political and economic level, these are very different, and the right policies to protect yourself from these scenarios are also very different.
I think that's super important. Yes, we'll come back to that.
Well, yeah, I think we'll come back to that, but it makes total sense. It's a risk management thing.
Yes.
Right? You need a portfolio of potential things you might want to do in the event. Many things can happen, right?
And you need to prepare. So, for example, if things go fast, then society will need some technological solutions, for example, to help treaties to work. If things go slow, then more importantly is the speed at which you can diffuse the technology in society. So they're like really different strategies, but if you're a government, you should be really acting now so that you don't regret whatever the outcomes will be, right?
So perhaps picking up on that and looking at the labor market, because one of the first, everybody can see that ChatGPT can help them write beautiful emails and many other things too, many beautiful decks. In past industrial revolutions, right, automation mostly displays blue-collar jobs. Most of the technical revolutions that we had in the past, that's what happened. Now, it's mostly about white-collar jobs, possibly being deployed. So should we expect some kind of a reversal of fortunes between technical trades and college graduate? What do you think about that?
I think it's unclear. Absolutely 100%. If you look at the automation of the last 40 years, it was disproportionately blue-collar jobs, although not only, because office jobs, especially with software systems, inventory control, word processors, and other process automations were also impacted. So once we have cognitive tasks being automated, that's going to create new effects. Whether that actually becomes an equalizing factor and whether college skills themselves become commoditized as a result will depend a lot on details. So one pattern that could very easily happen is that the flexibility and some other symbolic capabilities that college graduates have might still be useful for them to go to the next layer of jobs, so that even if they are the ones who are displaced from their tasks, the bigger burden might fall on lower education workers. We've seen that. Second, if you look at current places where AI is being adopted, it's still hitting more of the somewhat more routine and simpler tasks like IT security, the simplest end of marketing, information collation, etc. So it's not really hitting the more sort of skilled college-educated workers. So it's going to be really a function of how fast and in what direction it goes. And the biggest question there is exactly what Yoshua touched upon in the context of one of his answers. And the first question is that every single occupation that we have, even those that appear to be the bullseye, involve a variety of tasks performed simultaneously. And some of those tasks are much harder for AI models at the moment. So wholesale replacement of occupations won't happen anytime soon, would be my guess. And that's why the possibility of actually incorporating AI models in a way that works with workers, something that I've called pro-worker AI, is actually still, I think, quite beneficial socially, but it's not the direction where we're going. So whether that will actually be realized or not remains to be seen. But if we don't go in that direction, I think a lot of automation hopes will also be dashed in the near future.
And you have an opinion, maybe from a technical machine learning point of view? Or any point of view?
I'm like an observer of what economists are saying about these things. So clearly right now, we don't see a significant effect on the labor market globally, but there was this recent study from Eric Bjørnjonsson, where they look at a very particular sector of the economy, people who just graduated, and there they see a significant effect. But then again, it's a correlation. We can't do controlled experiments here. So I think the right way to look at this is not necessarily at this point globally, but look at particular areas, scales. As Daron said, right now it's easier jobs where the stakes are not too high. The other thing I would say to think about the impact on society is elasticity of the demand for those jobs, for those tasks. So if we could automate, if we could make like medicine, 3 times more efficient, we would not want to have 3 times less doctors and nurses, right? because we want infinite amount of medical help. But in other areas like call centers, well, once you have improved the quality of the service up to some level, it's not clear you want to keep all these people. In fact, the commercial pressure is going to be to replace them as quickly as possible. So there will be some groups of people who suffer more than others.
No, and for a non-economist, you use all the great keywords. Elasticity, I mean...
Don't believe him when he's being modest.
But yeah, so actually you touch upon a point that I want to bring. I mean, in Quebec, Canada, and the US, I mean, if we think about healthcare, right? Healthcare is, let's say politely, complicated. And infrastructure, right? It's crumbling. The system is all, there's too many people everywhere. I mean, there's too much demand, not enough supply, I guess. And governments, they cannot just spend their way out. I mean, you need more money. You don't have more money. The demographics are not really helping. Seems like a good old productivity shock could help. So maybe to Daron, I mean, is it safe to assume this is going to help us? Is AI going to actually be a friend or a foe for public services and liberal democracies?
I think it would be great if it became a friend. Mm-hmm. But again, only time will show. The general pattern in all of the industrialized world is that as we become richer and as manufacturing has been the source of most productivity improvements, what economists call Baumol's cost disease, which is the supply of some of these services which are not very capital intensive, which are not very easy to automate, which are not easy to replicate, such as healthcare, education, their prices have been increasing, and that's been a brake on economic growth and the prosperity or the welfare of consumers. So anything we can do to combat Baumol's cost disease would be a game changer. So far, I think I don't see the applications that can do that yet, but there are many, many possibilities. You can offer new services, much more online help, much greater capabilities for nurses, technicians to provide some part of the care process, much better diagnosis. I think all of these could be part of it, but a lot of healthcare is also intersecting with the physical world. So how to interface AI models with, for example, nursing homes or people who go to hospital, et cetera. I think those are going to be some logistical challenges. And again, I think expecting that in 1 or 2 years is not realistic, but I think within 10 years, with the right investments in AI, we could have some effects. But again, this is where the capabilities, reliability is going to be a big issue. This is where you cannot really afford to make mistakes. Understanding consumer demands is going to be a big issue. So I think there are some challenges.
Yeah, I'd like to add a few things. I think thinking only about AI as, it's going to help us automate some tasks is too narrow. The direction in which we're going is AI helping humans, and eventually potentially doing it autonomously, to come up with good ideas, solutions to problems. In my own work today, I'm much more efficient as a researcher because I have access to these frontier models. They're really good at math. Sometimes they screw up, but I can check it, right? It's easy. So I have access to a lot of knowledge that I wouldn't have access to. Again, I have to verify, but otherwise, it would have taken me like weeks and months of talking to people who are going to the library and so on. Now, I can in a few minutes get answers to questions and then just, click and I get a link to a paper and I can check it out. So that's a current state, and it's very plausible that we're going to see the rate of new ideas that drive the productivity enhancement accelerate. So this is something to keep in mind, I think, in terms of the impact. It's more indirect. Right? It's not directly the AI fills a job. It's the AI helps us, and eventually maybe does it alone, come up with new technologies new weapons, that's also a problem, right? Even ways that we can maybe improve our democratic institutions. So that good things, I mean, good ideas can be turned into good things or bad things, and then it becomes a political choice.
So, and thinking about healthcare, I mean, I think radiology perhaps is one of the best example because, I mean, image recognition technologies can be pretty good at being a helping hand, right, for radiologists. And now instead of looking at 100 scans a day, maybe you can actually do 500. So it seems, I mean, from understanding a bit what you've been saying, I mean, this is a possibility, at least along some angles, to democratize medical expertise. Because in Canada, you pay with your time. In the US, well, you just pay with the good old money. But it seems, I mean, this could help a lot of people, no?
Yeah. I want to bring up a point related to your question, which is we should not just think of like globally what's happening, or like, you know, maybe the point of view that I hear the most from researchers is what's going to happen to the US economy. The effect of these advances on the US economy and on other economies who, you know, in countries where we don't have the frontier could be very, very different. It's possible that there's going to be a concentration of the profits from AI happening in just a couple of countries, namely the US and China, if things continue as they are now. And in fact, if we see acceleration of the capabilities, then it's likely to be even more concentrated. For countries like Canada, this could be catastrophic. The reason is that at least with the current international laws and you know, national laws, it would be very easy for those companies that have the frontier AIs to bring the profits back to their headquarters, and the local companies, like Canadian companies, might just be losing against American companies that have superior technology that they don't give away, which would mean the fiscal base for the Canadian government or the Quebec government could shrink as companies go bankrupt and as people lose their job, if that happens. So this is a scenario, we don't know if it's going to happen, but it's one that governments should be thinking about.
So yeah, I mean, I think I completely agree with what Yoshua said, but let me try to sort of expand that in a little bit. I think there are several different issues of concentration. Each one of them is important. I don't know which one is more important. And then there are several ways in which frontier versus non-frontier economies are going to be impacted. On the issue of concentration, I think one is just sheer concentration in terms of market share or value. Yeah. That is just phenomenally huge today. You know, when Standard Oil was broken up in the United States, its market cap was, in today's dollars, $3.9 billion. Wow. Today, you know, Google, Meta, NVIDIA, all of these are more than 100 times that valuation. So, and their revenues are almost 100 times as well. So these are really enormous corporations in terms of how they dominate their market segment. That's huge. The other centralization I worry about, and that's the source of power. The other centralization I worry about is information. Yeah. So data is going to be the lifeblood of AI, undoubtedly. Whichever way AI goes, whichever type of data becomes more valuable. But there is also a process of information centralization. Now, it is possible, I think, for AI to be in a much more decentralized domain-specific data, but that's not the direction we're going, and that's going to be a completely other source of centralization.
There's a technical reason why these general systems work better than narrow specialized systems. There's a synergy between the data coming from different sources, which my group and others have been already kind of seeing and predicting 25 years ago. And it is the reason why these frontier systems that are trained on everything outcompete the you know, more custom bespoke data-specific models that already also exist, but don't. Eventually, they get outrun by these larger, more general systems, and I'm already seeing that happening in the market. So I'm seeing small AI companies, including here in Canada, that used to do a lot of prompt engineering on top of frontier systems, and the cost of doing that is now making them not competitive compared to the same services you can get now with the frontier models that have been improving and don't need as much bespoke engineering, which means that in terms of cost, like sometimes you can even get those services for free, over $20 a month. And so having these companies that do a lot of bespoke engineering isn't competitive anymore. And so we could see even more concentration for technical reason, where those companies able to train these huge models basically outcompete the smaller ones that have been sort of thriving in the last couple of years, but it's not clear it's going to continue.
But on that one, I mean, there's an industrial organization element as well. It could well be that the foundation models become commoditized.
Yes.
In which case, the greater value added and potentially decision-making power could shift to companies that use those as inputs with their domain-specific data.
It would be a much better world.
It would be a much better world, but
economically, politically, and so on.
So that's brings me to my third source of concentration, which is political power. So especially in the United States, now the political or social power of AI companies is also increasing, and that's going to create a variety of things. And then finally, just very briefly, I don't want to make this longer, but on the frontier versus non-frontier, there is a possibility that even if AI does something very valuable for the US economy, it could actually be damaging to developing economies because it would actually save or eliminate the labor that they are abundant in or damage the sectors in which they had a possibility of catching up. So there are very complex issues which really makes governance of AI from an international perspective very important, and the current environment makes that completely impossible. The US-China rivalry, especially around the rhetoric of superintelligence is around the corner, just a race to the death, makes global governance very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of trying to make this a better world, I mean, most definitely the period we're living in is special, let's just call it that. But let's say we had a policy to-do list with respect to AI, and perhaps picking up what you said earlier, I mean, there are very different scenarios. So, you have, if you had a to-do list,
Right. Let me actually start by thinking about, and I think this is a useful thing to actually triangulate many of the things that we agree on, and perhaps leave some of those where we might have slightly different emphasis. The way I like to think about this is perhaps there's a 2x2 set of risks. On the one axis is whether a technology's risks or adverse consequences are unforeseen, side effects, versus part of the way that they are being developed because of their business model. And then the other two is whether the problems are because of the failures of technology or because of successes of technology. So for example, when Boeing's airplanes crash, that's because of the failures of technology. When nuclear weapons kill people, that's because of their successes. If nuclear weapons misfired, we would be very happy. They wouldn't be able to kill people. And then foreseen, unforeseen, we see that in social media. Some of the negative effects of social media were unforeseen. I don't think Facebook really set out by saying, we're going to create a mental health crisis for teenagers. That wasn't unforeseen. But their business model was, we're going to make people addicted. So that was a foreseen, that was part of the business plan. They wouldn't want to give that up.
Yeah.
So I think we want to, for AI as well.
Some people foresaw that there would be problems, including myself. I was worried about AI being used as a tool to increase the efficiency of advertising,
of course,
and recommendations.
Right.
When my colleagues Yann Lequin and Jeff Hinton were recruited at the same time by Facebook and Google, I thought, oof, this is dangerous. But you're right.
But that was on the attention by the mental health, I think, came as a bonus.
These details we could not foresee,
right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And they're not details now, they're major.
Yeah. So I think for AI too, there are going to be some unforeseen consequences. Yeah. There are going to be some problems that arise because the models are too good.
Yeah.
At the end, superintelligence would be on that bucket, but there will be a lot of problems because the models aren't as good. Because if the models aren't as good, they don't create the productivity benefits, but they may still cause to create the displacement. They may create much slower potential realization of the benefits. And I really worry about, and this is where, should we really worry more about the nature of technology? The answer is yes, of course we should worry about that, or the corporations that control the technology. I think, the corporations that control the technology, I think, is a much clearer place where we know how these things can go wrong, and I think they can go wrong well before even AGI, let alone artificial superintelligence. Sure. So on the path to those things, we would already be fried by the corporations themselves. So I think dealing with the corporations is much more immediate to me, but we have to deal with all of these risks within these 4 buckets.
I agree with your buckets. I'm going to give some specific examples. So on the unintentional problems, because there's a sort of failure, there's something a little bit counterintuitive, which is we could have systems that are even smarter than us, but actually don't have the same goals that we do, and those goals could be bad. So this is the problem of loss of control and misalignment, including biases and discrimination. So they are not things we want. This is not intended by the corporations, but it could turn out to be catastrophic, even if, in some sense, the technology is very successful, like these things become like rational agents. So that's the unintended case that's, I think, important to keep in mind, even if technology gets really strong in some ways, but then there's bad intentions from humans, and concentration of power is one category we'll be talking about, but there's another category, which is weak actors, people who just want to create destruction, terrorists, maybe sex, people who have, so think about the use of weapons in the US, right? There are lots of people who have maybe mental issues and so on, and if we build technology that allows a lot of people to do bad things like cyber attacks or disinformation or create new viruses, and we're not exactly there, but we see the trends moving in that direction, I think then we could have a lot of intentional, but not wanted by the corporations, very bad outcomes for society.
So that's an interesting point, right? I mean, it's what I understand. What you say is that even if corporations were to do everything according to what they want and do so in
no, on this I'm with Daron. They could be cautious.
Okay.
They could be transparent.
Okay.
They could have actually good risk management, and they don't right now, at least not at a level that is satisfying to most independent scientists.
But also, alignment, I think, is a very good concept. It's probably not enough, and it's because global alignment and local alignment may be in conflict. But aligning as much as possible the way that technology is deployed and used and its consequences with societal objectives, but we need to be clear about societal objectives too, that's going to be very helpful. So if we had a good alignment test on social media, we wouldn't let the attention economy develop in the way that it is. We also wouldn't let such monopolization of the sector and things like that. So the alignment test is good, but we need to be detailed and sort of distinguish local and global alignment.
And as you keep saying, we need to be deliberate and intentional in choosing where AI is going to go, both at the technological level, so we choose the safer paths, and at the scale of on which jobs, which tasks do we want to focus the power of AI? Because socially, the result could be very different depending on the choices we make.
Yeah, and I think in that context, one thing that worries me, which just falls into these and very much aligned with what you're saying, is I don't see clear business models in the US tech industry that would manage to monetize these AI tools in a very productive way. I think digital ads is still the most attractive and the easiest way of monetizing them. Chatbots sell to consumers is never going to generate the kinds of revenues, and automation, I think, is going to be too slow to generate the kind of revenues that would be a match for the outlays that they are putting in right now. So I see I fear, maybe wrong, but I fear digital ads and that sort of monetization as the common denominator that's going to emerge and engulf a lot of things, which is a recipe for disaster.
And then, I mean, you have a new nonprofit, right, called Law Zero, and I think you put forward a lot of these things. You try to put them into practice. You want to tell us more about the approach?
Thanks for asking. Yeah. In June, we created a new nonprofit, which is a spin-off of Mila, that is focusing on the R&D question: how do we build AI that will not harm people? And that includes, because a human is asking the AI to do something bad, so that's like intentional misuse, or the AI itself, because of the phenomena like reward hacking and misalignment, end up choosing goals that are bad for us. And right now, unfortunately, we don't know how to do that. We have seen in the last year many reports and papers showing misaligned behavior, up to including the AI choosing its own survival at the expense of the life of a person. Now, of course, this is like all simulation. Like, nobody died, right? But it's concerning. Like, we need to find the answers, and unfortunately, the leading AI labs are not taking this very seriously. I mean, some of them take it seriously enough that they're at least trying to measure these phenomena, but they're not investing nearly enough money, and actually some economists have been trying to think of how much money should we invest in AI safety, and we're investing like a hundredth of what economically would be rational to do. And that's probably because of the race condition between companies and countries.
Yeah, and I mean, and Law Zero, I mean, is working towards making that happen.
Yes.
Perhaps from a scientific point of view, I'm just curious, how does it happen?
Right.
A model.
Okay, I'm going to try to explain it very simply.
Yeah, I mean, we have a.
The problem that we've seen over the last year of these like misaligned and dangerous behaviors, at least in simulation, is because we have AIs that have bad goals, bad intentions, wherever they come from. And so I'm asking a kind of extreme question, which is, can we have AI systems that understand how the world works, can make good predictions, but have no preference for the state of the world? This is what we mean by non-agentic. And first, this could be very useful by themselves, like in scientific research, in medicine, but they could also be helpful to mitigate the risks from untrusted agentic systems, so like the kind of agents the companies are currently investing hundreds of billions into, because that's going to replace jobs according to their views. And so we can put a layer on top of an agentic system that maybe could be misaligned, and the layer basically is checking that the input and output of the AI is not going to lead to some bad outcomes. And if it does, if it's dangerous, if it's above a level of risk that is not acceptable to society, then those actions are vetoed and not performed. So this sort of thing already exists in a small scale in the systems that companies build, but the way they're designed now will not work when the AIs become more capable, if they do.
So perhaps now a broader question to you both. Humanity, right, struggles quite a bit to coordinate an important issue, and one of them would be climate change. Now, AI seems to be something also we might need to coordinate on. So what's going to happen? Are you optimistic?
Well, I mean, I think I'll go back to the point that I made earlier, which is that I think global governance is key. Climate change, pandemics, the power of large corporations, AI, those are all global problems. Mm-hmm. And we just don't have a good global approach. But worse, I think the current AI dynamics is making that much harder. I think today, because of the AI race, or at least the way that the AI race is being presented and amplified by some people within the industry as well as within administrations, is that global cooperation has become much harder. And I think it's even if AI delivers, some significant fraction of the promises that people are making, as long as it remains, something done to 6 billion people, 7 billion people who have no agency, no voice in the direction of AI, I think that's still a tragedy.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you think about some of the catastrophic scenarios I alluded to, either in the hands of people with bad goals or of their own accord, the catastrophic harms could be due to AIs that are developed in one country and causing harm in a very different country, in fact, even globally, right? So if you think about creating pandemics, you can unleash some viruses in one place, and then the whole world suffers. So there's no way we can get to a positive future if AI capabilities continue without global coordination. And unfortunately, as Daron said, we are going in the wrong direction right now. But I also have some optimism for the following reason. At some point, if the capabilities of AI continue to grow, unless we have completely irrational governments in the US and China, they will want to protect themselves against these possibilities and realize that, say, China and the US are in the same boat. Like, neither of these countries want terrorists from other places to use AI against them, for example.
What are the odds of completely irrational government in the US and China?
Well, let's
sounded
hope
like
that-
an economist assumption. Let's assume the government is rational.
Well, at least mildly rational would do, right?
Yeah. Anyway. So perhaps to close this discussion, I think it'd be nice just to talk about perhaps advice for the next generation. You're obviously two very influential and successful figures. And I guess what I find funny about programming, we were saying programming is you should study programming. Basically in 2010.
No more.
This is what you should do. This is going to bring you, a nice career. No more, right? I mean, not no more.
Not exactly.
But
I'm going to put a lot of caveats here.
Yeah, of course. But perhaps we don't need as many as we used to. So
but they're going to be crucial to the sort of choices that we can take with technology. So even if we need less programmers. So first of all, by the way, the demand for programmers is very elastic. So we could use 10 times more human power to address the needs of programmers. So it's not going to be, it's not going to be like the whole market disappears quickly.
Oh, no.
But more importantly, I would say we are entering a phase of our history, humanity's history, where if trends continue and AI capabilities continue, or whatever at some rate, we are entering a phase where the decisions that we're going to make, the technologies we're going to build, the political decisions we're going to make are going to be extremely consequential for our future, for our well-being, for our democracies, for the geopolitical stability of the world. So it's a time, if you want your life to be meaningful, maybe you couldn't have been born at a better time. If now you're a young person and you're thinking about what could I do, it sounds maybe depressing because you're thinking, oh, I don't know what job to do and so on. But another way to think about it is our actions could be extremely consequential. And so the way I think about it for myself is, what can each of us do to bring the world towards a better place?
I couldn't agree more. I don't think I can add anything to that, except perhaps that, we shouldn't, just one of the unintended consequences of emphasizing, super intelligence is around the corner, killer robots around the corner, is that it disempowers people. It gives them a sense that they have no agency, and I think
we have to realize that we have agency right now, and if some of the issues that Daron and I are worried about happen or continue to move in this direction, it is plausible that the impression that we have less and less agency will grow. People will feel more despair. But because our actions could be so much influential, it's like there's a bit of a contradiction here, but it is also a place where if you're like me and you're trying to think of, okay, things look bad, but what can I do to move the needle even a little bit? Then you can be very motivated by whatever you do.
Yep, completely correct. Fully agree. And now I think first we'll thank our speakers. And I'm sure, I mean, a lot of you have a lot of questions, so that's why we have time for questions. So I think we might have a microphone somewhere. I don't know. Oh.
Hello, thank you both, and the three of us. So coming back to the labor market part of the discussion, there was a near consensus until recently that AI would help workers and make them more productive rather than displacing them at a large scale, for instance. But we see more and more anecdotal evidence of CEOs saying, well, there's quite a part of our workforce that can be replaced by AI. Do you think this recent development is just anecdotal? Or is it just a new shift of like advancements in the technology, or advancements in or like changes in the way that we use AI in the workforce? So should young people be more afraid of their bosses or AI systems?
Well, I think there's a lot of confusion there too. First of all, I think for the last decade, if you talk to tech company people high up, behind closed doors, they always seem to be much more on the side of automation is inevitable, it's going to come, and people are not prepared for it. But then there is sometimes emphasis of how AI can be a tool for workers and co-work with workers, etc. Sometimes that's wishful thinking, sometimes it's window dressing, but actually I think the promise is there. It's just that we're not investing enough. So I think there is one of the alignment places where, to me, it's most important, is that we can develop AI tools in a much more pro-worker direction to complement worker capabilities, enable them to do more sophisticated new things, but it requires a different type of AI model than the ones that we have right now, at least perhaps build on the foundation models or develop them in a different direction. And I don't see much effort in that, partly because AGI is a lot of the focus of the industry, partly because the industry doesn't really have business models to monetize that very well. So yes, I would worry about that, but also it's not like it's going to happen tomorrow. So again, the deliberative thing, we do have some time for thinking about that, and exactly like what Joshua said, there's a lot of agency there.
Thank you.
Hi. My question is more on the side of like ideas part of AI revolution. Like you said, like the new way that it helps us do research is kind of accelerating our research capacities. My worry, and I don't know if I'm right about this, but like you said, like there's kind of like ways that you can check if it's right, like right now, but now we assume, are we assuming that the child, if we, like the requirements of like what we need, what is useful to know, that like in the future is changing so much that I worry that like if we continue to kind of like educate our child in like the newest way with like more gamification, more like system one type of like learning, are we like in danger of just not making them very more cognitive like able, that like I'm kind of like thinking that even like higher graduate studies are going to be like better compared to BA in the future, and I worry that like if we skip like the memorization and own computation that we like the older like young people that we still had like the old school education, like I worry that like maybe they're not going to be prepared to know what's wrong with the AI solution like we are right now. Like I feel I'm lucky in the in-between age I am right now to like in my education. So I don't know if I'm right about this.
I don't know, but I see more and more, the good news is I see more and more scientists trying to study those questions. I think that's the right thing to do, because it's easy to make assumptions and be wrong. Also, if we're going to have government policies to try to, avoid some of the bad effects, we need a bit of like scientific support for these choices. And things could go bad. There's, these recent studies from MIT actually on psychological effects on cognition, and the effects from people developing an effective relationship with their AI, becoming friend or lover or whatever, These are things we need to understand better so that we can direct policies appropriately. The point, again, that Daron has been making is we need to be deliberate. We can't just rely on the forces of market. It might be very profitable to get everyone, and lots of people addicted to their AI system, but that may not be, the best thing for society.
I
guess one aspect is, how hierarchical we think the knowledge production process has to be. So I have no doubt that Yoshua is right, that the top scientists are going to be able to use AI to automate some of the tasks that were more routine or computational, and that's going to be useful for them. And if all that matters is what Einsteins do, and then it trickles down, perhaps that's all enough. But if you need everybody in society to be part of knowledge production, that is much more of a concern, because I think there is a real fear that AI models, at least the way that they're being used in education right now, are going to make people not learn how to learn and not develop their sort of skills of inquiry and critical thinking. And I think that's, again, absolutely not an inevitable process. There's nothing in the nature of AI that should push us there. But the way that the current education technologies and the way use of chatbots in education, I think, raises that risk.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. Okay. So I have two questions. One pertaining to the, you mentioned earlier in your talk about rational governments, and we're not so sure about that, right? And that made me think recently about how I put a lot of attention on political polarization, and how political polarization has been an increasing factor that we've been seeing in, not just the United States, but also across the Western world. And we've seen also more recent survey of people who are increasingly saying, at least in the US, that political violence might be a necessary thing to put the country back in order. And that is an increase on both sides of the political spectrum. And this issue of political polarization, I'm just wondering how that would affect the institutions that we are so reliant upon, really. And I also have a second question, just as a more personal question, which is I want to become an industry policy economist down the line, and that is my current main goal right now as an economics student. And I was wondering if you have any advice for somebody like me. Thank you.
Well, why don't you take the first rational part if you want, but I'm happy to give that answer as well.
It can go both ways, and it's going to depend on our choices and government choices. Regarding polarization, it's very clear already that AI is being used through deepfakes to polarize things even more. And I can easily imagine technically that we can even fine-tune our, these frontier AIs so that they will learn to generate content that will press on our psychological buttons in order to achieve change of political opinion, for example. And we're already seeing some of the studies on persuasion suggesting this is happening, but it could be worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I think social media should be a cautionary tale, especially replacing real-world social networks with things online has a lot of unintended consequences we have to watch out for. AI is going to make those things more capable. And I think if you want to advance anywhere, I think in this age, you just need to have an edge. AI is going to commodify a lot of skills. So I think economics is probably not one of them in the short run, but you never know. And I think knowledge of AI systems at a deep level is still not one of them either.
Thank you so much.
Hello, good morning. On the concentration of power, we discussed a bit. On a personal level, I use more and more AI for healthcare questions, and I know it's highly debatable. And what I see is that there is some concentration of power from people that build AI, but there's also concentration of power from people that refuse to let AI go inside part of societies. And I feel healthcare is one of them. Most of the public conversation tends to put away AI from healthcare. When I use it, again, personally, I don't try to push people to do that, but I'm extremely satisfied more and more. And I'm actually way more satisfied talking to ChatGPT to know what is the source of my health problem than trying to actually reach a Quebecer doctor, right? And we know there's like a huge lack of doctors in Quebec. We know there's actually some people that have healthcare diplomas and that are not doctors because of the concentration of power of, for example, healthcare system here.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about that? Sorry, I lost my way.
Again, we need more rational governments, and one obvious place where AI can clearly be useful is healthcare, and so putting barriers to that development is a huge mistake. What can I say? And hopefully, the people who take decision, for example, in the Quebec government, can inflect on the will of another group of people who maybe want to, keep some privileges. So I don't know.
All right. Well, hello to you three, and thank you for being there today. I had a question that came to my mind. Do you still believe that it is relevant to think the world and to theorize it based on states? Because we talked about the face-pacing evolution of cooperation, of cities and all that stuff. And I was wondering, what was your stance and your point of view about that question?
I mean, I think, yes, it is, because a lot of these policies are going to be made, the most consequential ones are going to be made by the United States and China. They very much have a national government focus. It is true, corporations are multinational, but the regulatory power is still with national states plus European Union. And I think European Union's power is not to be belittled. I think the issue is that Europe has fallen behind in tech. It's very curious because it's not like a simple case of regulation, like it's normally blamed on regulation, but Europe is quite advanced in many other tech-heavy industries. But in digital technology and AI, it's fallen very behind, and I think it would be much healthier if Europe was a little bit more advanced so that it's really a more balanced sort of situation out of which to build some sort of global governance structure.
So I completely agree with that, and my current reading is the main reason why Europe is lagging is because both governments and private investors are not sufficiently risk-taking. And so you end up with good investment for very reliable technology that we can predict the revenues of, what has made the strength of Germany, for example. But when you have to try 10 different things, out of which only one will work, Silicon Valley has been really outracing every other parts of the world. And the only way Europe is going to kind of survive this, in my opinion, is if they understand that their future is at stake and decide to both invest massively to bridge that gap and do it in an agile way, which is going to be a challenge.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much for this very interesting conversation. At one point in the exchange, you talked about corporations, and also the thematic of transparency came out. I'm not an expert in AI, so it is maybe a misconception, but if we consider that at one point in the AI system, it is kind of a black box, so you put some input inside and there is an output that comes out, but you're not sure of how it has been processed. How to be transparent about it?
Yeah, I can answer that. That is not the kind of transparency I'm talking about. We're not anywhere close to fixing that problem. However, transparency that can make a huge difference from the point of view of impact on society is transparency on how those systems are trained, what kind of risk management policy the companies have, what kind of commitments do they make about, if we reach some dangerous capabilities, what do they do? And then we need to track that. So they also do evaluations of risks, various kinds of risks. That needs to become public, or at least, if there are national security reasons, available to the attorney generals or people who can take decisions, or insurers who can help to manage that risk. But we need that sort of mandatory risk management, and this is exactly what the Code of Practice of the EUA Act is doing, on which I've been involved, and it's also the same spirit that we see in the California SB 53, a new legislation that was recently signed by the governor, and other states in the US that are pushing in the same direction. Transparency is going to be essential. It's not necessarily sufficient to guarantee safety and public good, but it is a crucial part, because when the public knows about what the companies are actually doing, that's when the companies feel they need to be more disciplined.
So I 100% agree with that, but just going back to your point, which I would call the legibility of these models, that I think is a big issue as well, because I think the hopes of integrating them into healthcare or other places where there is expertise and humans have to work with them is almost impossible without that legibility, because if you don't understand where the advice comes from and how you can sort of build on it, it's going to make it very difficult for humans and models to work together.
So it's more, if I understand well, it's more on the process than on the technical.
But I also agree with Daron, and I think we should push research in directions that can lead to more explainability might be a better word than transparency, in a way that the explanations are also honest, because it's easy to fool somebody, with wrong explanations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I think, Raquel, tu nous dire quelques mots de clôture?
Yes, I would like to say that thank you so much. I enjoy a lot. We could be here, I think, more time, but we have a lot of things this day, and then we need to cut here. I would like to thank, je remercie aussi à toutes les personnes qui sont été dans toute l'organisation, et surtout les personnes de l'UQAM. Je ne vais pas dire des noms parce qu'il y a tellement. Les personnes de l'UQAM, les personnes de l'ESG, les personnes de tous les groupes de recherche de mon département, et en spécial mes collègues de mon département de sciences économiques. Et maintenant, merci à Joshua, Daron et Philippe. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Raquel. This was great. Yes.